Today we're going to be looking at the elements of a short story. Most stories have a plot, a theme, your characters, setting, and a conflict. And most short stories can be diagrammed using the diagram in the picture that is shown. You have your exposition, your rising action, your climax, your falling action, and then finally your resolution. So let's take a look at all of the different elements. You first have your exposition. This occurs at the beginning, and the reader is introduced to the characters and the setting of the story. And just a quick reminder, your setting is when and where your story takes place. You also have different characters. You have the protagonist, which is the hero, the antagonist, which is often known as the bad guy, the static character stays the same, and the dynamic character usually changes in some way. And then this leads us to the rising action, the second element of a plot diagram. The rising action includes all the events that lead us to the climax, and often the conflict is introduced in the rising action. And there are 4 different types of conflicts we're looking at. You have character versus character, character versus nature, character versus society, and character versus self. And then that leads us to the climax of the story. This is the high point of the story, and usually your character comes face to face with a conflict and your character changes in some way. And then you have your falling action. All the loose ends of the plot are tied up, the conflict's over, been taken care of, and the climax is over with. And then that finally leads you to the 5th and final element of a plot diagram, the resolution. And this is when your story comes to a reasonable end. Everything has been resolved. There are no strings undone. Everything's finalized. So just a quick review, let's put it all together. You have your exposition first with your rising action second, and that usually occurs at the beginning of the story. And then that leads us up to the climax, which is usually in the middle of the story or closer to the end. And finally, you have your falling action and your resolution, which always occurs at the end of the story.